Okay, so this is really weird. I've decided to do a video diary, like it's the early 2000s. Um, Basically on my mental health because I suck at keeping a diary. I've got about 5 or 6 diaries sitting next to me. Probably about not even 10 pages have been completed in each of them because I really suck at constantly writing about my feelings. I can usually write about my bad feelings, but I struggle to talk about or express the good because it's almost like I feel like they're not as important. Like, I need to document the bad things that are going on, not necessarily the good things that are going on. So I don't know how long I'll keep this up for. As I said, I usually suck at keeping this sort of thing, but we'll see how we'll go. So today is January 22nd, 2020. It's my mum's birthday, and it was an okay day. I've been on the up for the past few weeks. I left my job in November 2019 for 2 reasons. One of them being that my mental health was just completely in the shitter. I was extremely suicidal and I couldn't will myself to get out of bed in the morning. And the second reason being is that I loved my job where I was working, but I put way too much pressure on myself. Say, I had almost like a KPI, which was 80 tasks and 30 calls. I would get upset with myself if I hadn't done 100 tasks and 30 calls, or 120 tasks and 20 calls. If I hadn't reached that almost 120 to 140, I'd come home very upset with myself, feeling like I was a failure. If I got pulled up on something for doing a small mistake, it was like it's the end of the world to me. How could I be so dumb, almost? So I put a lot of pressure on myself, and that severely affected my mental health, but that was all me. I was going to go back into hospital. This was going to be my 4th hospitalisation. So just a really quick rundown, which I might go into more detail later on about, is I was diagnosed with depression in 2014, anxiety in 2015-16. I was hospitalised when I was in year 11 in 2017 for 3 weeks just before Christmas. I was then hospitalised again in 2018 after a suicide attempt, the day before my sister's birthday. And I was trying to make, hospitalised in 2016 at the end of the year in November, coming up to Christmas. Hospitalised for a suicide attempt in 2017. Hospitalised again for suicidal thoughts in 2018. 2019 was the first year that I broke that consistent going to hospital each year, and that was my New Year's resolution. So I am a little proud of myself for keeping that New Year's resolution. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day 2019, I went to myself, this year my goal is to not go back into hospital. I was really close, but we ended up deciding that wasn't the best decision. So even though it was a really close thing that happened, I'm still proud that I didn't have to do that, that I kind of did keep that New Year's resolution, that I broke that cycle of going into hospital once a year since 2016. But instead, I left my job and basically just did therapy at home. I went and saw a therapist. She's absolutely lovely, and she's the first therapist I've had that's actually looked at my kind of thinking behaviour and looked at why I have depression and gone, well, we're going to do something to change your thinking patterns. Previously, therapists I've had, maybe because I was younger, just they didn't want to change anything. They more wanted to just talk to me about what was going on. And you know, that could be helpful to talk about it, but if you never change anything, it's always going to stay the same. So I went to her for a couple weeks, and then the Christmas holiday came around, so I haven't seen her for a while. But it was really interesting to kind of find out why my brain thinks in certain ways. You know, specifically looking at, I don't want to say diagnosed because that's not the right word, but that I have this perfectionism, not so much with myself, or like if I was to show you around my bedroom at the moment, it's an absolute disaster, but more if I'm doing something for someone else, such as working, or I'm doing something that someone else is going to see, such as writing in a diary, it has to be perfect. At both of my jobs, I chose to write little journals, like step-by-steps on how to get things done, and little tricks and tips that I'd learned in these journal, like almost bullet point formats. And especially at my first job in 2018, I went through about 5 or 6 diaries, because each time I made a mistake, such as misspelling a word and having to scribble it out or something, I would go back to that diary. I'd either rip the page out or I'd just stop writing in it and I'd start all over again, because that mistake was just kind of the end of the world to me. So that was something else that we found, is that I've kind of got to deal with mistakes. Mum's a school teacher and I've been helping her cut out some things for her class, and you know, Mum's going, it's fine, it doesn't need to be perfect, but then I'm like looking at it really close up and making sure that there's no white left on, like if it's a black thing that needs to be cut out, I'm making sure there's nothing, like no white edge or anything, that it's perfectly cut. And then if I make a mistake, I feel completely shitty about myself. Like, again, it's like I feel like a failure. And that's something I really need to work on, because it's so stupid. You know, if there was someone else my age, or even if my mum, if she started panicking about cutting things out and making them perfect, I'd go, you know, you need to just chill a little bit. It's not that important. And something my therapist is getting me to do, and I think this is a really good idea if you have kind of people that you're really close to and that you care about, such as a best friend, or in my case, I'm very close to my mother, is pretend that they're saying or they're doing what you're doing or saying about yourself. So if I go to myself, oh, you're an idiot, you're a failure, you're not good enough, you know, in my mind, that's, you know, just how I talk to myself. But then if I pretend it was my mum saying it to herself, I go, well, what are you doing? Why are you being so mean to yourself? So it's kind of working. I sometimes forget to do it. But, you know, to me, it's a good kind of idea to try and get you to be kinder to yourself, because I'm a big believer in we're all our own harshest critic. You know, people can say a million mean things about you, but majority of the time you've already thought them about yourself. So yeah, Mum's birthday today, just before I came and made this video. Mum's my rock, and I'm probably going to get upset because I'm really passionate about how I am so incredibly lucky to have a mum like her. You know, I have friends who have families that they're not close at all to their parents. And, you know, I see the stories of people whose parents treat them like absolute shit. And I am just so incredibly thankful that I have 2 absolutely amazing parents. Mum and I used to not be too close. You know, going through that angsty teenage, oh, I hate my parents, they're all against me. That was probably going on from even when I was like a kid, because I have an older sister and she's 5 years older than me, and I'm always aiming to be where she is. So, you know, like when I was 12 and she had her first boyfriend at 17 or at 16, I was going, I want a boyfriend, but I'm 12 years old. I'm not going to get a boyfriend. You know, she's getting engaged at 23 and I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm not going to be getting engaged, but yet I'm still wanting to be where she is. So when I was younger, because my sister was older than me, obviously, in my mind, her and my mum got along a lot better than what me and my mum did, because I was still that annoying kid. You know, you couldn't go shopping with me without me wanting to, oh, I want to go try on clothes, or I want to go here, I want to go there. You couldn't really go out with me without being really annoying. I'm a very annoying person. I'd like to think not so much as when I was a bit younger, but I still think I can be an annoying person, not intentionally. I think I can be a bit much at times, but yeah. So I went through that angsty teenage phase of mum must like my sister better because mum does more things with my sister, when in reality it's mum does more things with my sister because my sister's older and she can do those things with her, which I didn't get until, I'd even say like the past 2 years. But it was probably around when I was 16 and I was getting really depressed. 16 was kind of the year the shit hit the fan, and it's been hitting the fan ever since then. But it was kind of the year that we all recognised that it wasn't just angsty teenage depression, which can happen. There's lots of forms of depression and lots of levels, I could guess you could say, and because of hormones sometimes those feelings really intensify. So when I was younger, things were kind of played down a lot. For example, I remember being bullied in year 8, year 9 by a bunch of boys. And when I told mum, it was, oh, you're not being bullied, you're just being picked on, there's a difference, don't blow this out of proportion. And because mum wasn't taking it seriously, I'm gonna tell a funny story, sorry. I'm gonna seem like a real idiot now. I went to my dad and I was like, you know, how do you punch a boy? And he was just kind of like showing me. Fast forward, one day I ended up punching the boy because he was being a real asshole, and I went and told on myself because, you know, I'm not a bad person. So I went up to the teacher and I was like crying. I was like 13 years old. I'm full on crying. I'm like, I just punched someone. And she's like, what? I was like, I punched a boy, I punched that boy. And she's like, okay, well, go sit down. We're gonna need to tell the deputy principal. I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, that kind of shows you, for a long time, I was closer to my dad because mum kind of downplayed things. Although when I was officially diagnosed with depression when I was 14, I'm going completely off track here. The original story was that I didn't feel as close to mum, but now I'm talking about my original diagnoses. Anyway, when I was in year 7, you know, I went from a Catholic school, which was really, I was very sheltered. Even now, I could still consider myself pretty sheltered. You know, I didn't know of families that almost didn't like their children. I didn't know of divorced parents who were in this fight with each other. It was always, in my mind as a kid, civil things. Like, I had no idea about the abuse some children suffer. Like, I was extremely sheltered. I didn't have a friend until year 8 whose parents were divorced. So I was completely, you know. Anyway, back on track. So go to high school, public school, and angsty teenagers are cutting themselves and they're saying, oh, I'm depressed, that's why I'm cutting. And I kind of go, well, I'm feeling sad, I don't know how to deal with it, so I start cutting myself. Dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I've still got, they're not too bad now, but I've got marks on my arms that are never going to go away. You know, there's one in particular on my right arm, and I can get it tattooed over, that's not an issue. I never cut deep or anything, but it's still there as a reminder of what an idiot I was. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever going to see this, probably not, but if you're watching and you cut yourself or you're thinking of cutting yourself, please don't. I know I kind of get the reason you're doing it is you want to feel that pain, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the track, you're going to look at those scars on your arms and you're going to regret it. Something I recommend and I do is the rubber band trick. I still do it now. My therapist recommended it to me. You just put a rubber band on your wrist. It's still, no, you can flick it really hard and it really hurts, but it doesn't leave any marks. And so I really don't, again, I get why people do it, but it's not something that I think you should do, because I regret it. I've got the marks, and every time I look at them, I just think, what an idiot I am. So anyway, I started cutting myself because I didn't know how to handle my depression and anxiety. My sister saw the marks on my arms, went to a doctor to talk about it. This wasn't a therapist, this was like a family doctor I've had since I was a baby. And, you know, work through it with him. He put me on, I don't even know if it was actual medication or just like a placebo, because I'm like 12, 13 years old, so I really don't remember what medication it was. But I remember my sister in particular, and this is because she suffers from actual pain. She has endometriosis, which I can give an explanation in another diary. She suffers from what I would consider, compared to me, not compared to everyone, but in my mind, real pain. So she would kind of not make fun of me, but downplay what was happening. Like, if we had a fight, she'd go, oh, you're going to go tell your doctor that this is why you're depressed. And I was just kind of like, well, no, this isn't why I'm depressed. And I felt like someone my age shouldn't be depressed. So I kind of listened to what she was saying, and even Mum said something once or twice. And they didn't realise, like, how are you meant to know that your 12, 13-year-old daughter isn't just being hormonal? Like, really? I get it. I'm not angry about it at all. But yeah, so I weaned myself off the medication. Wasn't strong enough to have any effect on me, I don't think. Year later, feeling depressed again, it would kind of go in a cycle. And the cycle stopped when I was 16. Now we're getting back on track. Because it had been downplayed for so long, I stopped talking about my emotions. Like, I shut off from my parents, basically. 16 years old was probably the worst year of my life. It was my most harmful year. As in, like, I wasn't cutting myself, but I was doing other things that still now severely affect me. The biggest part being that, you know how I was talking about New Year's resolutions? I'm a big believer in them, even if it's something small. And in 2016, my New Year's resolution was I want to have a boyfriend by the end of the year. And I remember this girl who seemed to always get the boys, and she would talk about how boys would always come over to her house and how she would go to the movie theaters with them and do things with them. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, she gets boys to like her. If I act like her, I'll get boys to like me. So I started kind of copying the kind of behavior that she was doing, which was putting myself out there a lot for guys, like doing things that were very sexual and inappropriate for one, a 16-year-old to be doing, and two, doing in high school. So that really messed with my head. I'm still severely affected by what happened, what I did. I still have those kind of thoughts of, if I behave like that again, will guys like me? It's really hard, because that year, while doing all of that, I got with my ex-boyfriend, who I'm still best friends with, but that's a story for another day. So it got to a point where everyone saw that I was changing. I had the deputy principal, the one that I had to tell about punching the boy in the face, come and pull me out of class and say to me, "I'm seeing you change, are you okay?" And I lied right to her face. I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine, it's nothing, it's all good, it's fine." You know, I didn't know how to talk about what was going on. My friends were really scared for me. You know, they had to go and tell on things that what I was doing and who I was lying about. I wanted to be seen as the cool girl, so I lied about a lot of shit. And again, this is a story for another day, because 2016 was truly the worst year of my life. I did the dumbest stuff. I did the most harmful stuff. It got to a point where, and I'm probably going to get upset now, I truly believed I was going to kill myself. I still remember it. It was a few weeks out from Christmas. Mum and Dad and my sister were going somewhere. And while they were gone, I was going to swallow as many pills as possible in the house. My family are on a lot of different types of medication. So my theory was, if I just swallowed bottles upon packets of pills that I didn't know what effect they'd have on me, especially with all the different types, it would kill me. That was my theory, that was my plan. And I remember, and I'm getting upset now, I remember Mum was putting the washing out on the line out the back, and I was standing at the back door watching her. And in my head I was thinking, I'm not going to see her again. I'm going to kill myself and I'm not going to see her again. And she came inside and she gave me a hug goodbye, and she looked at my face and she said, "What's wrong?" And I just completely broke down. I said, "I want to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. I need help." So that was how I ended up in hospital. And that was my first year in hospital. Then my second year was year 12. So graduating high school. You know, when I was in hospital, Mum and Dad said to me, "Do you want to leave school? Do you want to go back?" And in my head, this is around the time I started dating my ex-boyfriend, and I wanted to go back to be with him. I wanted to go back to do all the graduating things, like get pictures taken, go to formal, everything like that. So in my head, it was the right thing to do. I don't know. Year 12 was still a pretty shitty year. I was a shitty person in year 11 and 12. Even year 10, I was still a pretty shitty person. If I had my time over again, and how does the saying go? If I knew then what I know now, so if I could go back and redo it with all of my knowledge of my life now, I'd either not go back and go and get a traineeship, or I'd go back and not be a shitty person. I don't think I'd ever want to do year 11 over again. But if I could redo a year in my life and have a different outcome, it would be year 12. I lost a lot of friends that year because of just how shitty of a person I was. And I'd like to think I've changed since then, but I'm no longer friends with those people, so, or they're no longer friends with me, I should say. So I don't know if I've changed. The only person I've remained friends with from high school says that I have changed, and it's one of those things that you'd like to believe, but also because of my anxiety, I'm just going, is she just being nice to me? Is it that she didn't realise how shitty of a person I was? It's all these different thoughts running through my head. So anyway, I ended up going back to year 12, was a shitty person for the whole year, went to formal, and my boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend now, spent the majority of night with his friends, and to me, a love-struck 17-year-old girl at formal, I'm going, why doesn't he want to spend time with me, you know? He's very awkward. I recognize that now, but when our first year of dating, I don't want to say recognize, but didn't understand some of his issues. I remember the night of the formal, you know, sometimes I wish in my head that my life would play out like a movie. It's not gonna. So in my head, I'd open the door and he'd go, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, I'm really lucky to have you. Like all those prom formal scenes in the movies, it would play out just like that. But instead I opened the door and he went, are you gonna let me in? And that really upset me. Then he spent the whole night with his friends, and during the slow dance, he, again, wasn't paying attention to me. And so I went home rather upset about it. I think 2 nights later, so this would be the 17th of November 2017, we got into a massive argument, and I was sitting on the edge of this bed, and my pills were over on the chest of drawers that are just across from me. And in my head, I was just kind of like, you're thinking about kill yourself. Just do it. You're thinking about it this much. Just get it over with. But still thinking my life plays out like a movie, I text my boyfriend, you know, I've just taken a bunch of pills. And in my head, I wanted him, because he lives around the corner virtually, I wanted him to be that knight in shining armor and come sprinting over to save me and tell me everything was going to be okay. But that's not what happened. Instead, he called my dad. My dad came downstairs and my dad was so angry. He goes, you know, what have you done? I said, I've taken a lot of pills. And he just kind of grabs me and drags me to the bathroom. He says, put your fingers down your throat and throw them up. And I'm there crying and I'm going, I can't do it. I can't, because I don't like vomiting and I was scared. And I'm getting upset again because this relates back to my mum. And my mum came downstairs and she says, what's happened? My dad told her. And she wasn't angry. She just hugged me as I was leaning over the toilet. And she said, it's going to be okay. And I still remember that moment. Whenever I'm thinking of killing myself, I just remember my mum's arms around me, telling me it's gonna be okay. And since then, she's been my rock. She's been there for me. All of the time she's been supporting me, no matter what. And so I'm just so grateful for my mum, and that was what I was telling her tonight. On her birthday, I got upset like I did right now. And I said to Mum, you know, now I'm born and raised Catholic, but I'm probably not as devout as what I could be. I still like to believe there's a heaven though, and I said to Mum, I said, if there's a heaven and God decided if that my soul or spirit or whatever you call it, where it was gonna go, I said he knew I needed you to be my mother because I wouldn't have survived with anyone else but you. And I truly believe that. I don't want anyone who is rich or famous or anything like that. I wouldn't be alive right now if it was not for my mum and dad, and specifically my mum putting her arms around me and telling me it was going to be okay. So that was a very long story.
But, you know, I'll say it once, I'll say it a million times. I am so incredibly lucky to have two amazing parents. Two parents who support me so much. And, yeah, whenever I feel suicidal, one of my techniques, I have a few, and most of them involve my parents, but one of them, which makes me feel like not wanting to kill myself, is just remembering Mum's arms around my shoulders, around hugging me and telling me it was going to be okay, and trying to make me feel better. She wasn't angry. She wasn't disappointed. She just wanted me to be okay. Oh God. So I've been talking for over half an hour and crying for probably most of it. So this was my kind of diary, I guess you could say, for the 22nd of January 2020.